This is Josh Friedman in Nairobi, Kenya, in the center of the city at the former site of the United States Embassy that on August 7th, 1998 was bombed in an attack carried out by Al-Qaeda that killed more than 200 people here, and simultaneously down in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, there was likewise a truck bombing, all part of the Al-Qaeda attack that killed, I believe, 11 down there. There were thousands injured. Most of the people injured were right here. The U.S. Embassy actually stood right where this park is currently. The embassy building was not completely destroyed, but it was hit pretty badly. But right behind me, you might see this building, small building that I'm pointing at right now. That's now the museum for this park, or rather this memorial. In fact, I'll show you some of it. Here's the wall of names behind me. Anyway, there was a 7-story office building that stood right where the museum now stands. That building was completely destroyed and brought to the ground by the Al-Qaeda truck bomb. This bank building, very tall bank building, is still here. It had all its windows blown out, and it was severely damaged by the bomb, but as you can see, it's still standing. The bomb did not bring down this tall bank building. Nowadays, this terror attack is used as a lesson in many regards. It's a very tough lesson. As I was sitting in the museum watching the film, I was learning a bit about how, at the time, the U.S. State Department had adopted regulations with regard to space, the construction of embassies and spacing them away from other buildings, and they were opting not to comply with those regulations and move the embassy at the time. The embassy was built before that happened. In fact, in the film, they're talking about how the U.S. ambassador at the time was saying that she didn't think it was safe, and indeed what happened was this office building was completely destroyed, brought to the ground, and there were people trapped alive underneath, I believe, that building, possibly the embassy building as well, but there was just rubble everywhere, and some victims were rescued, others weren't. There were people trapped underneath, some for a matter of days, and it was just a very gruesome, very deadly attack that actually was the biggest terror attack on the African continent. I'm not sure if it still is, if it still has that designation, but at least at the time, it was the largest terror attack on the African continent, and it was basically the attack that put Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda on the map globally. Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda were known to intelligence communities at the time, but the general public, both in the US and worldwide, were not very aware of bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. And this was the attack here in Dar es Salaam, but most of the damage and most of the loss of human life occurred here. And this was the attack that really introduced bin Laden and Al-Qaeda to the world, and unfortunately it did not prove to be a lesson enough to prevent 9/11 from happening, which happened just a little more than 3 years following the bombing right here. There are plenty of arguments to be made that, having seen what happened here and having gathered intelligence about Al-Qaeda's operations and about bin Laden from what happened here, that 9/11 should never have happened. That's an argument that can definitely be made. But nonetheless, it did, and not only has has, I mean, not only did 9/11 happen, but in a sense, Al-Qaeda is still carrying out attacks right here in Nairobi. So Nairobi's a very interesting city. It's really the leading city in most regards in East Africa. It feels very cosmopolitan compared to other places in the region. It's probably still the financial headquarters of the region. It's been surpassed by Dar es Salaam in population, but Nairobi's a major city in the region, really the leading city in East Africa. Yet it's very much grappling with a terror problem, which reared its ugly head very recently. So in the region, particularly in Somalia, but also here in Kenya and operating at times elsewhere, there's this group called Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is an Al-Qaeda affiliate, and Al-Shabaab has carried out several attacks locally, including just 2.5 months ago, in January of 2019, there was an attack here at a hotel complex in Nairobi that was believed to have been carried out by Al-Shabaab, and that killed, I think, between 10 and 20 people. So, despite there being this memorial right in the middle of the city and such clear remnants of such a deadly Al-Qaeda attack from more than 20 years ago, with the bank building still standing, and here the U.S. Embassy is no longer here, and there's this memorial park, which you'd think would serve as a reminder to lots of people, and I'm sure it still does, but Nairobi is still very much grappling with Al-Qaeda more than 20 years after this very deadly attack. There have been a whole string of Al-Shabaab attacks since then, and obviously there was 9/11, so this serves as a reminder, but it also serves as an unfortunate reminder and a bit of a picture of failure to learn some lessons in combating terrorism, since the attacks have continued on both by Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda affiliates, and lots of people have lost their lives. But this is a chance for you to get a look at what is left and what is now memorialized from the attack that really put Al-Qaeda on the map and really introduced the world to Osama bin Laden. Fortunately, my time in Nairobi is a bit short, but I have done a fair amount of Kenya coverage over the past 2 weeks, as I've been discussing some geopolitical matters as they relate to the country, not having to do with terrorism, although I'm getting to that a bit now. So there's been my coverage from Mombasa of the port there, the trade relations and disputes in the region, the high-speed rail that was built and financed by China, then how that could potentially impact the port. So I've been pretty focused on that, as opposed to focusing my coverage on Nairobi, which unfortunately I'll be departing today. But I would like to say, if I haven't made it clear already, that the Nairobi is very significant in the region, and it's unfortunate that I'm not delving into other matters here, but I think what I've been talking about in Mombasa very much relates to Nairobi and Kenya as a whole. So I appreciate you following along with my coverage from Kenya. I hope you appreciate this glimpse at a very historic yet very sad location right in the heart of Nairobi, and I hope to return to this city and country sometime in the near future, because I do feel like I'm leaving without seeing. I'm leaving, you know, there's still a lot left for me to see in Kenya. Alright, I'll leave it at that. Asante sana for joining me in Kenya. That's the end of Swahili. I've got one country left on my East Africa trip, and it's not a Swahili speaking country, so this is the last time I will be saying Asante sana to you, which if you haven't figured out by now means thank you very much. And goodbye from Nairobi, and goodbye from Kenya.